I want to ask specifically. You've got a couple of projects that are coming out. You just launched a podcast. I know you have this book coming out, Music in the Mayhem. Tell us what each of those, for those who listen to the podcast, what are they going to get, and what are you tackling within the pages of the book?
Okay, the podcast is all about this idea that problems are meaningful and purposeful. And I go into the science of it, and I'm going to be giving lots of practical exercises for actually doing this kind of work for instead of just trying to get rid of your problem or suppress it, to explore it and unfold the underlying process to transform it, like B.B. King does in his blues. And the book is a whole... Now, the book is where I bring music and psychology together, because it's a story of touring all over the world and using these ideas of taking whatever's happening as meaningful and purposeful and using it to transform the experiences.
We're talking with Dr. Zwig, musician, author, podcaster, and a man who is going to help us all. I'm so happy you're here with us. If we can, this has been, I think, probably one of the strangest times ever in this country. We've been through terrible things long before any of us were born, but I think in our lifetimes, this has got to be the weirdest time ever, and the most strenuous mentally. And you've come up with some steps to get through these things. I don't know if we have time to go through all 10 of the steps, but how did you come to this, and what are some of the basics to making it through this challenging time?
Yeah, the way I came up with it is a lot of my clients ask me how to deal with what's going on. The pandemic, the climate change, the fires, and my first approach, the thing that I say to people is, don't just, if your attitude is, how can I cope with this or manage it or endure it, you miss what I've been saying. The reason that problems exist is to wake us up in some way. There are growth trying to happen. So if you're just kind of in a down place and you're saying, well, how can I deal with this? You miss what's going on. So I tell people, don't just cope, grow. Use the pandemic. We're talking about the pandemic, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Well, and everything else, but yes.
And everything else,
okay, yeah. You use what's happening as a catalyst to make positive change in your life. We're so much stronger and resilient than we realize, and these things come up either in ourselves as our personal problems, or now as global world community problems. They come up to force us to wake up to what we don't see and hear and feel. So it applies to all kinds of problems.
Do you think
and
people
so
have...
I did create a...
Sorry, go ahead.
On.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. I was going to say that a lot of times with artists that we speak to on the show, and certainly with our friends even, I'm sure you have had a similar experience. I hear a lot of people going, yeah, this is a crazy and difficult time, but I get to spend time with my kids, and I've gotten a chance to, I started writing, and I've got a chance to go back and listen to music. Is that sort of people coming to what you're suggesting naturally?
Absolutely. The fact that, there's different levels of it. It all depends on how much you are personally challenged by what's happening. Everybody has a different experience and a different situation. But what you just described is part of the underlying meaning of what's happening. Sometimes it takes a world we each have our own personal processes, but we also have collective processes that we all share in. For example, a lot of us are incredibly busy and focused on so many things that we don't have time for our families. We don't have time for our inner creativity like writing. So sometimes things come up. For example, one of the things that stresses people out in this whole thing is a loss of control, because we can't control what's going on in these major world events. So what does that mean? One of the things it means is that a loss of our external control means we have to increase our internal control. And that leads to things like you're saying, taking time for your family, for your writing, all sorts of things. In the list, I talk about doing all sorts of things like meditating, yoga, practicing a skill, studying, something that feeds your sense of yourself, focusing on you. We're so focused externally.